Hey there, it's Chris. Welcome back to the next part of the Spartan Ultra training program where it's getting a little nicer out here. And I figure as an addendum to the earlier episode 5 that I put out on all the gear that you'll need, today is going to be, in addition to that, all the stuff we're going to need for our transition bucket here. So if you look at these, anything from like a paint bucket, say I'm just use a Home Depot paint bucket, spackle bucket, any of those types of things will work for this. But whatever you do, if you want to get one of these guys, one big advantage to doing this is I would get one of these nice kind of screw-on caps for the top. This is going to be great for not only keeping your stuff nice and safe and kind of secure in there, you can put that on when you get to the transition spot. It gives you a seat to sit on for that whole part. Now that said, there are going to be about 500 plus people doing this race. So that transition area is going to be filled with about 500 buckets and boxes and bins and all type of stuff worth of things scattered around inside that transition area. So when you get yours, yes, you might be one of those people this like has a plain bucket on the side. You can also go and put like little kind of tape marks or do something that kind of can designate it as yours. Either you get there early and to know exactly where in the corral your bucket's going to be located, or if you don't like an edge condition or an aisle condition or whatever in there, make sure you're kind of at least designed in a way that you can tell which one is going to be yours, because you don't want to spend a whole lot of time running around trying to figure out which one is yours and which one isn't when the time comes. You just want to get in your stuff, get going, and get out. Now, I'm a little close. Now that said, when we're dealing with transition and the midpoint between our, say, the first lap and the second lap, there are really two things we're going to be looking for this transition. One thing is we're going to be swapping out equipment. We're going to get anything we need to change from the first lap to second lap, like our hydration vest, all that. We're going to swap those out. And the second thing we're actually going to be trying to go for during this transition period is we can refuel ourselves during this as well. This is the one time in the race where we don't have to carry the fuel that we're going to use with us. So we can store some extra fuel in here, take some of that, and keep it in here and not have to bring it with us during the race. So those are going to be the two things you're going to look for. And our goal, as with most of the other obstacles, as I kind of started getting to in the previous session with the overhead obstacles, is we want to be kind of as efficient as possible going through this. If you do a transition well, you're not even going to know it's there. It kind of comes, it goes. When you remember the race, you're never going to remember it. If you forget to do something and it doesn't go well, this could really kind of hamper the second half of your race in ways that you really don't want to kind of get into. So here's hoping we're going to get this things going smoothly. And getting back in one sec, we're going to zoom in and see what we have inside this bucket here. All right. So when it comes to our bucket here, first thing I'm going to be sticking in this guy is the things I'm going to least likely need. I'm going to stick in the bottom of this because we're not going to use everything in here. Some of this stuff that we kind of stick in here is kind of a just in case, as a precaution. So one of those kind of precaution things I bring is an extra pair of shoes, and I have an extra pair of socks. Now, odds are you're never going to need to change these out. You're not going to want to change these out because you're going to want to trust the equipment you're starting with in the first place. And if you don't trust the shoes you're using in the first place for the first lap, you shouldn't be using those shoes to begin with. But just in case something catastrophic happens to them, it is nice having extra kind of backup care just in case. You might be saying, oh, I want to put a dry set of something, like a dry pair of either shoes or a dry pair of socks on during transition. I don't know if you've ever tried to take on and off a pair of compression socks that kind of go up to your knees after you've been running and been on a trail for about 17, 18 miles. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do. So odds are you're not going to be transitioning out of these things. You're not going to be changing and swapping them out unless you absolutely have to. Putting dry stuff on may be nice, but at the same time, if you've ever done any trail running before where things can get muddy, not muddy, after you go through like a big, say you're fording a river or something, or fording a stream and come back out, your feet are going to wind up being dry in about 5 minutes anyway. So I've never really had an issue. The only issue I might have is you might get junk kind of stuck in the bottom of your shoe, like extra mud or whatever that kind of hardens down there. But in terms of putting on dry stuff, people say, yeah, it might be nice. I've never actually had these, but it's kind of one of those just precaution elements. Again, the other things you're obviously going to have in here is you're going to have a secondary vest. You're going to be wearing a primary vest. You'll have your second vest, which is already filled up, ready to go in here. You're already going to have like maybe the extra pair of batteries or whatever for your headlamp. You might want to take out you might have the extra tape or something here. This is one of those just in case. And if you have your headlamp in your first bag, which you probably won't need in the morning, it tends to be just kind of light enough to not need it the first thing, you would swap your headlamp from your first bag into this second bag, and away you go. On top of that, we have the back flask in here is also going to be in. This is also going to be fully loaded, and that's now ready to go, ready to be swapped out. I'd say you probably have extra clothes in here. That may not necessarily be the case because, again, it's going to be colder in the morning when you first head out than it is during the second lap, during kind of the middle of the day period. So you're generally going to be wearing most of your layers early on in the day and not so much at this point in the race. So rather than being able to pull extra stuff out of here in terms of clothing wise, you might be throwing more stuff in here if you see it's going to get really, really warm. So let's say this is like a long sleeve shirt or whatever. If you realized it was 30, 40 degrees in the morning and also now it's 60 degrees in the afternoon, you may not want to carry that extra long sleeve shirt with you. So you can put it in here. You may not want to have the extra kind of the arm warmers. I wouldn't recommend putting those there. I would probably take these and throw these in your bag if you're not wearing them right now. Because the last Ultra I did over here, which was spring 2024, we went out in the morning and it was, I don't know, around 30, 35 degrees, something off the starting line. And within a couple hours, it had jumped up to like mid 50s. It was getting close to 60 by the time I got to transition. I was peeling stuff off. I was hot as anything. Got there, kind of threw the extra stuff in here, went out for the next lap. About an hour or two later, clouds cover started coming in. Sun got blocked out, got a little cooler, started drizzling a little bit. And all of a sudden, by the time I got to like mile 26, 28, somewhere in there, it was freaking cold outside again. And all of my stuff was sitting right back in here. So if you have extra clothing you're not going to be wearing, you might want to just transfer some of that over to your next bag you're using rather than put it in here, because the weather can be a little unpredictable on this course, and that can get you in trouble. But even so, you would save a little bit of space just in case you really, really don't want to carry it. But I would recommend carrying some of this stuff in your future bag because things can change. That said, I will keep an extra pair of gloves in here as well. This will be the fresh set I'm going to start the next lap with, while the pair after that is already tucked inside my bag. And I'll usually keep just a thing of first aid. Again, I've never needed this, like the roll-up bandage, whatnot, but I throw it in here as one of those just in case. I'd rather cross my T's, dot my I's, do the right thing on that front. That said, in terms of the refueling side of things, I will keep an extra either Gatorade or Powerade just sitting right in here. I will usually during transition, I'll probably down about half of this thing during the transition real quick and like 2 gulps, bam, I'm like halfway through. And then the other half is right after the race ends and we go to collect our stuff. I'll still have a little bit in here to then kind of have a little bit of something on me so when I'm kind of walking away from stuff, I still have something to drink on the way. At the same time, I'll also probably have my only solid food of the course I will keep in here. In this case, I've started doing, I'm a big fan of kind of like the trail mix kind of stuff, and I've started making my own kind of personal blend on this. So I'm going to have a trail mix kind of thing in here. And again, I can grab a couple handfuls and go. The idea isn't to sit around and wait. The idea is just kind of grab what you need, change your equipment. If you want to eat something and refuel, do it real quick. You want to be in, out within 5 minutes at the most, kind of in this transition. The longer you sit around during transition is the more lactic acid is going to start just kind of pooling up inside your legs, and it's going to make it harder to get started on the next lap. So the idea is to kind of get in, get your stuff, swap out, get your new bags out. If you need to transfer the headlamp over, refuel. If you need to use the restroom, they usually have porta potties and stuff on the side over there. Ideally, I would use that somewhere else on the course. I wouldn't necessarily do that right here because, again, the longer you're stalling and not moving, the more that acid's gonna start just pooling in your legs and you're not gonna wanna go any further. So if you can find anywhere on the course to use that, it's probably preferable, but there is usually a guaranteed one of those down here in the transition to use if you do need it. But like I said, I would probably use that somewhere else and not in this, because you're already sitting for long enough time than to have to not be moving for like an extra minute or something. That will help make a difference on that front. That said, this is a little bonus in terms of my little stack food that I use here. If you enjoy trail mix, like I said, I have my own special blend I use. We start with our traditional. Gonna start with our peanuts here. I'm gonna take, let's say about 2 handfuls of that, throw in there. Now traditionally it's gonna have raisins and M&Ms, but we're not gonna go that direction. If I can close this, that'd be even better. So rather than M&Ms, I started using morsels. So why? Because M&Ms, I believe, are 18 grams of sugar per use. You just want to use like one of these types of morsels, whatever. These are now just 7 grams of sugar. So we are less than half the sugar on this front. Just take a decent healthy amount there. We can kind of pour that in. So we're using less than half the sugar on those, and it gets the same energy output, or at least to me it feels like it's the same energy output. And then rather than raisins, I have started using the half sugar raisins. These here are, 14 grams of sugar. Usually if you just buy raisins, these are gonna be anywhere from like 24 to 28 grams of sugar for these. So again, we're using half the sugar on this stuff as well. And that said, we're using far less of a serving size. This is more just kind of a drizzle on top, just to give it a little bit of sweetness in there. And that's really it. You can add like dark chocolate morsels, you can add other stuff to it. But this is kind of what I do for if I need like a real quick energy need, mix it up. That's it right there. And that's gonna wind up being less than half the sugar of what you're gonna buy in a store if you do it this way. So it still has a decent amount in there, but it's far more health conscious for that kind of purpose. And yeah, that's, what did I just give my face? Yes, that's really all there is to the transition stuff. Again, just be expedient when you go into the plan, swap your stuff out, grab your fuel, and just go. Don't sit around, don't wait, don't contemplate things. If you're not sure if you want to do another lap or not, try to figure that out in like the mile or 2 miles leading up to transition. Don't spend your time at transition trying to figure that out. Because again, the longer you sit here, the harder it's going to be to get going on that next lap. And you know how these laps start. That first mile is typically about 750 feet of elevation gain on that first mile. So if you're sitting here and letting lactic acid build, it's going to be terrible for that. It's going to make it even worse. So do all your planning on that kind of final descent into it, and then just execute when you get to this point. If you can do that, then you're set. You're golden. So that's really all there is to that part. So as you can see, we're getting a nice shot here. I can finally start doing videos outside. So hopefully I'm going to keep this up and start doing kind of some more of these videos outside coming up next week. Not sure what it's going to be next week yet, but it should be good times. All right, that's all I got to say. And until that next week comes, and until then, enjoy.